Hey, Ryan Miller here, another CG Toolkit video. I'm going to show you how to make kind of a dungeon escape or a maze escape game where we've got to unlock doors in a variety of ways to exit rooms and get from point A to point B. I'm going to start off quickly by going to Game Object, CG Toolkit, and making myself a quick player and world. So I'll call this player and give myself a ranged attack. Okay, so there's my player. I'm going to use a bit higher of a camera angle here. You notice the default camera is at about 30 degrees, aiming at my character. I want it to be a little bit more overhead. So I'm going to raise it up and use this handy aim at target button to make sure my target is centered within the camera. I'm also going to change its ease speed, so that's how quickly it follows the player, down to 2, so we get some nice kind of slow camera movement. I'm going to get a couple of materials ready, so I'll delete these so we can make them over again. I'll create a material, I'm going to call this one blue. Make another one red. And green. So we'll just use these colors to differentiate between objects, since we're still not working with any real artwork, any real imported meshes or textures or anything in here. So I'll make a couple of cubes, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to block out kind of a room for the player to sit in. So I'm going to fence them in this little box area. Again, I don't need to drop these down to the floor. I can use the ground function to do that for me. So I'll move these around. You can hold down Control while you're rotating to grid snap that rotation, or if you forgot to do it and you're on some weird almost 90 degrees rotation, we can use rotation snap to snap these to their nearest 45 degrees. Make those walls a little bit longer. So now for the end of the room, it's nice to keep your game view open while you're creating maps here, because then you can keep in mind what the view of the player is. Figure out if you're making things too small or too big, or if they're obstructing the camera. Okay, so in the middle of these two walls, it's going to be a door. I'll call this door 1. Door 1 will be blue. Okay, so we'll make door 1 relatively easy to open. I'll make a cube that we have to stand on, and that will just be a switch for the door. Hoping that even the worst of players can understand that a blue switch and a blue door are connected. So I can create a new interaction. If you're not using the CG toolbar, I'll pretend you're not using it. You can go to Game Object, CG Toolkit, Create Interaction. Okay, so in this Create Interaction, this cube, I'll call this door 1 switch. I like to name my objects nice and early. That saves me having to go and name them later and being confused because I don't know what anything in my scene is. So by collider, so when the player collides with this, the door is the action object. It's going to move. I'll move it down, set the move to, and we should be able to now move on to this switch and have the door move down. We probably don't want it resetting because that's kind of a cruel joke to play, so we'll turn resettable to off. Great. Okay, so we've accessed the second room. As you're playtesting your maps, you'll find that it takes longer and longer to test things further and further in your level if you're having to clear that entire level just to get to the last part. So I highly recommend you grab the player and the camera and move them together to cheat and start at later points in your level. If you're getting tired of remembering, or if you're forgetting to select your player and your camera together, you can just group them with Control G. Just call this player group. And we can move that around. I think I can probably keep this straight though, so I'll delete that. Okay, so here's our next room. I can duplicate some walls, save myself a bit of labor here, and let's make this room a little bit more spacious. So I'm just using Control D when I'm selecting things to quickly duplicate them. There we go. So we've got two kind of side pods at the end here, and we'll do a similar door setup. So I don't want to use this door exactly how it is. This is still door 1 with the same object move on it. I'm going to take that object move off because I'll end up adding my own later. And I don't want to call this door 1 anymore because this is now door 2, and door 2 will be green. Okay, so the challenge with this room will be, instead of just stepping on one panel, we're going to step on 2 panels. Okay? So I'm going to create another switch. I'll just duplicate this one again and take off its trigger by collider. Make that one green and change its name. I'm going to call this switch A. Put her over there. And switch B. Okay, so switch A and switch B. I'm going to show you how to use the progress trigger, which is one of the more complicated triggers. To get an idea of how the progress trigger works, the progress trigger is both an action and a trigger. So when the progress trigger sits in the level, it sits in the level like a quest. It is expecting to be triggered a certain number of times, and when it is triggered a certain number of times, it will then trigger something itself. So for example, it could be triggered a number of times by us picking up a number of keys. And when we pick up enough keys, it will then trigger a door opening, or an enemy getting destroyed, or bridge forming, or something else. So it's a way of creating a little bit more complex interactions. Whenever you create a progress trigger, I always recommend giving it an empty game object to sit in, so that way that logical quest itself can act as its own little item that's being tracked. So I'm going to call this door2 quest. And I'll use the create interaction to first create the complete quest part of this. So create interaction, on door2 quest, it's going to be progress. Completion at count will be 2 because I've got 2 pads that I want to collect. And its action is going to be this door moving down. Okay, so now we've got door2 quest. It will trigger under targets door 2. It expects to have 2 things, and this will move down when it's triggered. So now what we need to do is trigger this quest when we pick these up. So I'm going to create another interaction here. Game object, CGToolkit, create interaction. This one's going to be by collider. I think I was on switch B. And this one's going to progress on the quest. Okay, so you can see switch B, trigger by collider, pointing to the quest. So it's going to increase the quest by 1. Same thing for this. CGToolkit, create interaction, by collider, and we'll trigger the progress quest. Now, the one issue we're going to have here is as we continue standing on these, they're going to continue triggering the quest. So, I want these triggers to destroy themselves when they're fired. One thing I want to show you is that you don't actually need to use the create interaction window for every interaction you want to create. We can add these components ourselves. So I can add a destroy object component on this, and I can just add it as one of its own targets. So now when door switch A, trigger on collider happens, not only is it telling door quest to be triggered once, but it's also triggering itself. And when it triggers itself, it's going to destroy itself. Make sense? Do the same thing for this. So destroy object. And it is going to also, by clicking on this targets up here, I can add a second target. So it's going to add one message to quest, one message to itself to destroy. So let's try that out. There we go, so that's destroyed. We can select the quest while we're playing to see the progress as well. So we can see the progress has increased to 1. I'll go and increase the progress to 2, and we notice the door moves. So that's a really simple progress quest. We can build on that again, kind of keeping with easy level progression, just so we're sure that our players are understanding the mechanics that we're showing them. I'll make another progress trigger so we can get some more practice using it, but I'll make this one a lot higher, so we need to do a lot more progress. I'll do something fancy with the walls here just to keep the players interested. We'll try rotating them. Okay, so we have another door. This will be our red door. So door 3, red. Okay, so that's door 3. We don't want an object move on it. We'll turn that off. We'll add our own later. And now, to make things more interesting in here, we'll use the progress trigger, but in this case, instead of standing on little pads for our progress, we're going to have enemies be the progress. So we can get through this door when we kill all the enemies in the room. So I can create enemies pretty easily if I go to Game Object, CGToolkit, Create Character. Remember, character has players and NPCs in it. So I'm going to call this Door 3 NPC. It's going to have 1 health. We don't want to have to put up too much of a fight to kill these guys. They will have a melee attack. Let's not make them wander, but let's make them aggressive. So create that. Where did it go? If you get tired of trying to move objects around in your scene and you just want it to come close to your camera, you know that there's this F function to zoom to an object really quick, but we also now have inside the CGToolkit bring near. The control is Control-Alt-F, and what this will do is it will bring this to my camera, kind of a reverse find option. So then from there I can just drop it to the ground. So I'll rotate him around so that he's looking at the player when the player comes in, and let's make him red to match his door. So I got 1 enemy, 2 enemies. Actually, you know what? I'll set up 1 enemy the way I want, and then I'll be able to duplicate that enemy without having to make them over and over again. So I'll make another quest object, working on the progress trigger now. So Door 3 quest. And I'll try to work without the interaction menu here. So I'll make a progress trigger on this object. When it completes, it will trigger Door 3, so it's going to trigger Door 3. And Door 3 will put an object move on. So I'm going to want it to move down about this much. We'll just copy this value in. This is how we manually set these up. So 0.03, 3.78, and 80.98. I'll just bump this back up now that I've copied the value. Okay, so this will trigger the door when it's complete, and now we just need to trigger this progress trigger with the actual bits of progress that we do. And let's say we have got 4 enemies here. So what we can do with these, we can create an interesting, let's go back to the create interaction for this. So since we have an enemy now, enemies will actually have deaths. So we can trigger on their death something else. So we'll trigger the quest. It's a progress trigger. There we go. It's now when this dies, it's going to trigger Door 3 quest. And what's nice about this is now I can just duplicate this enemy a bunch of times. There we go. So we got 4 enemies. Probably best not to overwhelm the player as soon as they enter the room. So we'll space them out a little bit. And I'll double check that that was in fact 4. Yep. And we can try this one out. So again, I don't want to have to clear the whole level just to test these guys out, so I'll move my player and my camera up. Make sure you're moving your camera as well. Make sure my player is able to attack. I believe I created him with an attack. You should see an attack ranged under here. Yep, that all looks good. Projectile is a bullet. Bullet is able to hit enemies. We do need unfortunately we need the enemy tag on these players, which is not built into Unity. So I will need to go in and add a tag, call that enemy, and then select these NPCs again and give them the enemy tag. This is required for enemy damage to work, so make sure you do that. This one guy's gone transparent for some reason. What's happened was, at one point I selected these by clicking on them in the 3D view, and really you should click on them here. Some were moving the group and not the other one, so I think I can reset him just by moving him within his group. Whew, I got lucky. Yeah. Whenever possible, try to select in the hierarchy view and not in the 3D view, unless you know you're working with something like a wall that's only one object. Okay, let's try this out. I'm going to save my scene because I have not saved in quite a while. Okay, so again I can attack with left click. I think he's dead. Let's have a look at him. If I look at his mortality script, he is dead. Cool, and if I check the quest is progress of 1, so it is happening. We do have an option to destroy when they die here somewhere. Alright, so we've killed 4 enemies, we're free to move on. If we want these enemies to destroy when they die as well, I can delete all but 1, just to save myself some time here. And in addition to trigger by death being triggering the quest, I can add a destroy object and just make sure it's destroying itself as well when it dies. So it's triggering the quest and itself, which will get that destroy object hit. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. So now they're actually destroying when I kill them. Great. So I'll leave you off there. Feel free to play with the other triggers, and you can try adding more rooms to this quest and seeing what else you can get accomplished. And have fun with the toolkit.